We begin with a massive news development coming in from Sri Lanka. The island nation has finally got a new president. Ranil Wickremesinghe has been elected as the 8th executive president of Sri Lanka with 134 votes. The 6-time Prime Minister has now been elected as the president, whereas the ruling SLPP leader, Dala Salaha Peruma, could manage to get only 82 votes. And the leader of the leftist Janatha Vimukti Peramuna party, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, got only 3 votes. All this as 223 lawmakers cast their votes and 2 abstained, while 4 were invalid. The country's newly elected president says that Sri Lanka is currently in a very difficult situation. We have big challenges ahead. Now, for more perspective, joining us now is, of course, our correspondent, Dasuni Athara. She joins us live from Colombo. Also joining us is Ashraf Hydari, the Afghanistan ambassador to Sri Lanka. He joins us from Washington, D.C. I welcome both of you to WION. I want to take my first question from you, Dasuni. This is, of course, a big news development. The world has been watching the events unfold in Sri Lanka. The island nation has finally gotten its new president. No surprises there. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the 6-time Prime Minister, is now president. Tell us more about how this is being perceived.
Well, as of right now, in this area, things seem to be pretty calm, but this was expected by many, even though yesterday there seemed to be a bit of uncertainty as to whether Dala Salaha Peruma had secured a majority over that of Ranil Wickremesinghe. But sources who are close to now president were quite confident that he will emerge victorious, and that was proven true just moments ago. Because if you look at the votes, Priyanka, we are looking at 134 votes. That is well over the 113 that is needed for a simple majority here in Parliament, which shows that a majority of the Parliament has their confidence in President Ranil Wickremesinghe to steer Sri Lanka out of this all-important and worsening economic crisis.
Absolutely. Coming back to you now, Ambassador Hydari, I want your perspective. How do you feel about Wickremesinghe taking over the reins of Sri Lanka at a time when, of course, the country is battling multiple crises, a stifling economic crisis which has been ongoing for months now? The world has been watching. What lies ahead?
Well, the diplomatic community really cares about the suffering of the Sri Lankan people. They've suffered for too long. It's, of course, their internal and sovereign decision as to who they have decided to back. It's very apparent, and it's been for a while, that many have supported the Prime Minister now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, given his years in the government and experience, and as well as his contacts in the international community to help work with the Sri Lankan people, and of course their representative in the Sri Lanka Parliament, to address the many challenges, as your colleague just pointed out, that confront the people of Sri Lanka. And I think this is what really matters at the end of the day. It's only about 2 years, the remainder of the term of the former president. And I think it's a time for all Sri Lankans to come together, as they have just done and demonstrated by this 134 votes for Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe to lead Sri Lanka forward and out of the many challenges that the country and the people in particular is facing.
Right. In fact, we're getting some live protest shots from Colombo at the moment. Remember, there were fears that if Wickremesinghe is elected president, fresh protests may break out on the streets of the Sri Lankan capital. Once again, for all our viewers who are tuning into WION at this hour, this is a big news development coming in from Sri Lanka. The island nation has gotten its new president. Ranil Wickremesinghe has now taken over charge of the embattled country. And as we can see, protests are breaking out on the streets of Colombo. These are live shots coming in from Sri Lanka's capital. Our correspondent Dasuni Athara is in Colombo at the moment. Dasuni, we've been showing our viewers the visuals that we are getting in as of now from Colombo. Tell us about what's happening around you on the streets.
Well, Priyanka, I am really outside one of the main roads that lead to the parliament. This is a high security zone, and right towards the end of me, you will see there are barricades that are manned by multiple security officials. So the situation in and around parliament seems to be highly guarded, highly secure and calm. Nevertheless, yes, we are getting reports that fresh protests have erupted in the commercial capital of Colombo, because we have been monitoring this situation and sort of tapping into the people's mood to really know, and we do know, that a majority of the public, or some fraction of the public, believe that Ranil Wickremesinghe is also not the solution. In fact, he was also part of the problem, that he should also resign in the same fashion as former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, which is why we are currently getting these reports of fresh protests that are breaking out in the commercial capital of Colombo, whereas the parliament is in Sri Jayawardenepura Kotte, which is a little outside central Colombo, which is why things are a little calm around here, and obviously because this is now a high security zone as well, Priyanka.
Right, Dasuni, I think there were fears already in place that fresh protests might take place if Wickremesinghe is elected as president, which has happened now. So is there fear of a crisis, a brewing crisis hitting a tipping point like we saw last week in Sri Lanka? Will we see more protests on the streets now that there is a new president?
Well, we are yet to see that, Priyanka, because, like I said, this is a very initial story. This is just happening right now. The entire country is just getting to know who the 8th executive president of Sri Lanka is. Now, keep in mind, this election was purely a parliamentary poll. This 8th executive president of Sri Lanka was not a president that was decided by the majority of the people, but rather the majority of those in parliament. So in the coming few hours and days, it will be interesting to see whether the majority of parliament and their views, whether that is really supported by the majority of people here in Sri Lanka. So it's really pretty much a situation of people versus the parliament right now.
Right, Dasani, stay with us. Ambassador Hydari, I want to take the next question from you. We've been watching multiple crises unfold in Sri Lanka. The world has been watching, in fact. Sitting in Washington, what do you make of the situation as of now? There's a new president in power. His challenges are cut out for him.
Well, of course, the new president needs time. I think he's made it very clear that the challenges are enormous, that it needs time to address them internally, and also with the support of the international community. And so the people of Sri Lanka really need to be patient and give him the time that he or any other, a candidate or successor would need to address the challenges facing Sri Lanka. And remember, those challenges are not just in Sri Lanka, but in so many other countries that are grappling with those challenges, and they've been working over now the past 2-3 years to address them. So the newly elected president needs time, and I think he was very clear on his goals when he was picked as the acting president, but also when he was, picked as the prime minister. And I think, yes, people could be dissatisfied with his performance in the past, but he's come forward to, offer his assistance and support for the nation at a time when Sri Lanka needs it the most. And I think people need to be patient and give him the time that he needs to address the challenges. And those challenges are very specific when it comes to specific needs: electricity, energy, gas, but petrol, and as well as food. So it takes time, and I think the new president should be working very soon with India and other countries in the region, China, of course, and as well as the West European Union, the United States, and other countries and friends of Sri Lanka to shore up the support the country needs to address those very specific and acute needs of the Sri Lankan people.
Right, absolutely. Dasani, coming back to you, let's talk about some of the challenges that are ahead for the new president, especially one that may see protests in the next few days in Sri Lanka. What are your expectations?
expected, and we did see President Ranil Wickremesinghe in his capacity as acting president in a statement did say that he himself will allow and support protesters as long as it is peaceful, because the right to a peaceful protest is a constitutional right here in Sri Lanka. However, he did differentiate between protesters and rioters, where he did sternly say that legal action and strict action will be taken against rioters. So on the outset, it appears that President Ranil Wickremesinghe will be unfazed by these protesters as long as they are peaceful. But it will be interesting to see what sort of stern and strict action, both legally and security-wise, will be taken in the event these protests turn violent or tense.
Dasini, can you tell us anything about the tough actions or decisions that Wickremesinghe may have to take in the next few days to get Sri Lanka out of the ongoing crisis?
Well, we do know that President Ranil Wickremesinghe, for months on end, has been very clear that this situation will not get better over time. He has constantly said that Sri Lankans will have to endure much harder and tougher times in the coming few months. And he has been saying that more than once to the general public. So it will be sort of interesting to see what form of policy reforms he will bring about, especially how best he will try to broker in the IMF deal as well, because right now Sri Lanka's only savior in terms of financial assistance appears to be a bailout from the International Monetary Fund as well. So to garner the support of the MPs in the House who might not really be of his views in terms of economics and finance will also be a challenge for him within the parliament when he picks this all-party government as well. Because, you know, in an all-party government, you will have representatives of both the opposition as well as the government. So passing something would not be as easy as having a majority-led party of parliament, or rather an all-party government from the same majority-led party. So that will be interesting to see. In terms of the economic crisis, Sri Lanka is still facing an acute shortage of fuel, which needs to be addressed at its earliest. Just today, power cuts, which were for 3 hours, were extended to 3 hours and 40 minutes. So it also seems like the power cuts might extend in the coming few months here in Sri Lanka, given that there is no solution for the ongoing fuel shortage as well. So right now, all eyes will be on the acting president and how he will try to stabilize this country in terms of essential commodities.
Absolutely. Dasuni, Ambassador Hydari, I want to take the same question from you. The challenges ahead for the new acting president, he has his task cut out for him. In fact, we're seeing live protests against Wickremesinghe being elected as the president in Sri Lanka as of now. What, according to you, will be some of the tough actions that he'll have to take, as we know the island nation is looking at a bailout from the International Monetary Fund?
Well, first, he needs to ensure stability, and I think needs to end violence and all these riots for now increasingly no reason, but, you know, for the people to be patient and wait for the newly elected president to work out medium to long-term solutions with the IMF to bail out Sri Lanka's collapsed economy on the one hand, and to really get food and fuel to the people of Sri Lanka. And I think that's what, you know, really the people of Sri Lanka right now need, and that's what is driving these protests and dissatisfaction of Sri Lankans with the government, even with the newly elected president. So the sooner he moves on these issues with the IMF and the World Bank and other donors, and of course friends of Sri Lanka, sooner he would be able to address those needs and challenges, and the sooner he would be able to help stabilize the situation in Sri Lanka. And he can do so. Of course, so many efforts are already into motion. He actually helped set them and the motion when he was, picked as the prime minister, and now he's continued that effort. So now with so many votes in the parliament, and hopefully with the support of the Sri Lankan people, he should be able to move on all those efforts to address those challenges facing suffering Sri Lankans. But it needs time, and I think all Sri Lankans at this time need to come together on the same page to help rescue themselves and their country. I think that's one thing that external actors cannot do, including neighbors. As much as foremost, India has done so much to help Sri Lanka address its challenges. But Sri Lankans, at the end of the day, and their political leadership, as they just demonstrated in their parliament, that needs to address their challenges. So the newly elected president does need, time and support from their people and their representatives in the parliament to address those challenges.
Right, absolutely. Daswani, coming back to you, I want to talk about something that the new president has just said. He says that our divisions are now over. That is a comment coming from Wickremesinghe. Help us understand what this means.
Yes, speaking in Parliament, he did say that for the last 48 hours, the Parliament was pretty much divided in sort of supporting an individual candidate in the run-up to this presidential election, which is why he signaled that division needs to end now, given that he has been elected by a majority vote in Parliament as the executive president, which is why he made that statement noting that divisive politics and siding with a certain candidate or a certain party needs to now come to an end and that everyone needs to come together. He also referred to the opposition leader as my dear friend, and he again invited all of them, along with the other two presidential candidates, that was SLPP MP Dallas Alha Peruma, along with the leader of the Janata Vimukti Perumuna, Anura Kumara Dissanayaka, to really come together now and to form this all-party government, because that is what is crucial right now in order for Sri Lanka's political stability.
Right. Daswani, let's talk about choice. It's played a crucial role in the choice or the lack thereof for the people of Sri Lanka. We've seen massive queues for essential commodities, for fuel. Sri Lankans haven't been able to go to work because transport services have been disrupted. Sri Lanka was once one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world, and it is now facing a crisis never seen before since it got independence, in fact. So what choice did the people of Sri Lanka have?
In terms of choice, this election purely was done through Parliament. Like I said before, it will come to a point where it will be the people versus the Parliament. For the first time in Sri Lanka, this presidential poll took place purely in Parliament, where the public did not have much of a say. But in terms of a crisis and the choices that Sri Lanka has as of right now, is not quite much, Priyanka. It's just a large part of the public spending days on end in fuel queues or spending much of their days at home in power cuts. So all that the president has asked for is patience. And to be honest, that is all that Sri Lankans can afford in hope right now. And it is when that hope sort of depletes that we see these protests turning angry, violent and tense, which is what we saw over the past few months as well, where people of Sri Lanka since last year have been waiting and have been suffering with these power cuts, with these shortages. And it really took that tipping point on the 9th of July, if you recall, where people, regardless of a fuel shortage, regardless of power cuts, walked by foot and on foot to Colombo to sort of take over the presidential secretariat and the house, the official residence of the president, in anger and in frustration because they've just had enough. Now, will this appointment of the new executive president really pacify the people? We are yet to know, but we also do understand there is some form of protest against the new president, but we are yet to see how that will progress in the coming few weeks. Priyanka.
Right. Daswani, stay with us. I just want to take a final question from Ambassador Hydari. Very quickly, Ambassador, tell us what you expect to unfold in the country in the next couple of days.
Well, at this time, it's really uncertain to predict anything. It all depends on the support the new president gets from those who have voted for him, and as well as those whom he has invited to come all together and set aside all political differences and tensions and support of national unity to address the challenges facing the people of Sri Lanka. And as well as it also depends on how he really appeals to the people and wins their hearts and minds and their support in order to just, set aside continued protesting and to just, give him the time and the patience that he needs to address those challenges. But he also needs to take, specific and immediate steps and actions when it comes to working within the neighborhood and as well as with the multilateral intergovernmental organizations, especially IMF, to go about, bailing out the Sri Lankan economy so that the rank and file of the people of Sri Lanka really needs to get and see immediate relief from what they've been suffering now for the past 2-3 years since the advent of the COVID-19, its impact, and of course the rest.
Right, Ambassador, thank you so much for all your insights. Thanks for joining us on WION. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.